His name was Daniel, 29 years old, and the night I am about to tell you about, he had nothing, not almost nothing, nothing, no job. The last one had ended 3 months ago, no warning, no reason, just a text message and a locked door. No family. His mother had passed when he was 19. His father had left long before that. He had one older brother somewhere in another city who had stopped returning calls 2 years ago, not out of cruelty, just out of a life that had moved forward while Daniel's had stayed still. He lived in a single room that cost almost nothing because it was worth almost nothing. A mattress on the floor. A broken fan that only worked when you hit it twice on the left side. A window with a crack running down the glass like a scar that nobody had bothered to heal. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. What time are you listening to this right now? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Because this story is not just Daniel's story. This story is for every person who has ever sat in the dark, completely alone, and wondered if anything was ever going to change. Daniel had tried. That is the part nobody ever talks about when they tell stories like this. They skip the part where the person tried. He had applied for 43 jobs in 3 months. He knew the exact number because he kept a list. 43 applications, 6 callbacks, 3 interviews, 0 offers. He had no degree. He had dropped out at 21 when his mother got sick and he needed to work. By the time she passed, the gap in his resume was already too wide, and every year that passed made it wider. He was not lazy. He was not careless. He was lost, and there is a difference. A lazy man does not keep a list of 43 rejections. A careless man does not lie awake at night burning with the need to do something, anything, if only he could figure out what. The money had run out 4 days ago. He had $17 left, enough for rice. Enough for another week if he was careful. Not enough for anything that looked like a future. That night Daniel could not sleep. The room felt like it was shrinking, like the walls were moving inward 1 millimeter at a time, and if he stayed there 1 more hour, there would be no space left to breathe, so he walked no destination, no purpose, just the need for air, for movement, for the feeling that he was at least going somewhere, even if that somewhere meant nothing. The streets were almost empty, a few cars. A couple walking quickly in the cold. The smell of rain that had already passed. His shoes had a hole in the left sole, and he could feel the damp pavement through the sock with every step, but he kept walking because stopping felt worse. He passed the same shops he always passed. The pharmacy with the flickering sign. The closed bakery that still smelled faintly of bread even at midnight. The mobile repair stall behind the shuttered gate. He had passed all of them 100 times. He was about to pass them again. And then something stopped him. It was a piece of paper. Small, torn at one edge like it had been ripped from a notebook in a hurry, taped to the dark window of a closed shop he had never paid attention to before. The handwriting was ordinary. No special pen, no careful lettering, just someone's handwriting. And the words were simple. So simple that Daniel almost kept walking. Almost, but something made him stop. Something made him lean in. Something made him read those words not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time feeling something shift inside his chest that he could not name and did not fully understand. The note said this: "You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not out of time. The only question that matters is this: what will you do with the next 90 days? That was all. No name, no number, no explanation. Just those words on a torn piece of paper, on a dark street at midnight, seen by a man with $17, and no reason to believe tomorrow would be different from today. Daniel stood there for a long time. Long enough that the cold went from uncomfortable to something he stopped noticing. Long enough that 2 more cars passed and their headlights swept across him and moved on. He read the note one final time. What will you do with the next 90 days? And something cracked open inside him. Not dramatically. Not with tears or a sudden surge of energy. Just a small, quiet crack. The kind that lets light in. He took out his phone. He photographed the note. He put his phone away. And then he walked home with something he had not carried in a very long time. A question worth answering. He did not sleep that night. Not because he was suffering. Because he was thinking. For the first time in months, his mind was not circling the same drain of fear and helplessness. It was moving forward, towards something. Even if that something was still blurry and uncertain, it was there. A direction. A question pulling him like a compass needle finding north. He opened the notebook he had not touched in over a year. He wrote the number 90 at the top of the first page. He wrote today's date underneath it, And then he asked himself the hardest question a man with nothing can ask himself. If I had 90 days and nothing to lose, what would I actually try? He wrote for 2 hours. Not plans exactly. Not a strategy. More like an honest conversation with himself that he had been too afraid to have for a very long time. He wrote about what he was genuinely good at. He had always been able to explain things clearly. In every job he had ever worked, people came to him when they needed something understood. He wrote about what he had noticed in the world around him. He wrote about the small repair shop 3 streets away, whose owner was always overwhelmed. He wrote about the neighbor who had asked him 3 times to help her set up her phone, and he had done it in 4 minutes, and she had tried to pay him, and he had said no. He stopped when he read that line back. She tried to pay me, I said no. He sat with that for a moment, then he wrote 4 words underneath it. What if I said yes? Day 1 was not dramatic. He woke up with his face on the notebook. His neck hurt. The room was cold. The fan was still broken. Nothing had changed. Except the notebook was full. And the question was still there, steady and quiet. Like a small fire that had not gone out overnight, he splashed water on his face. He ate the last of the rice. He picked up his phone and he did something that terrified him completely. He texted his neighbor, "If you still need help with your devices, I am available. I am starting to offer this as a service. Small fee. I will make sure everything works perfectly." He put the phone down. His hands were shaking slightly, not from cold. She replied in 4 minutes. "Yes, please. Can you come today? My laptop also has a problem." Daniel sat very still for a moment. Then he picked up his notebook. He turned to a clean page. He wrote at the top, Day 1. Underneath it, he wrote, "First yes." He spent 2 hours at her apartment, fixed the laptop, set up her phone backup, explained everything twice, slowly, until she understood and not just followed. She paid him a small amount. Not much. But she said something that stayed with him longer than the money. She said, "You know, you explain things in a way that makes me feel like I am not stupid." Daniel walked home holding that sentence like it was something fragile. He wrote it in the notebook. Day 2, he knocked on another door, then another. He made a small handwritten card with his name and phone number and the words, "Device help, setup, repairs. Fair price patient service." He slid them under 4 doors on his floor. 2 people called that week. Day 8. He fixed a small business owner's printer connection that had been broken for 3 months, and the man looked at him like he had performed something miraculous. He had not. He had simply looked up the solution, tried 3 things, and the 3rd one worked. But he did not say that. He said, "These things take patience," and the man laughed and paid him double what Daniel had asked. That night, Daniel wrote in the notebook, "People do not pay for the solution. They pay for the certainty that someone is going to solve it." He underlined it twice. By day 20, something was happening that Daniel had no word for yet. The days had shape again. That sounds small. It is not small. When you have been living without shape, without structure, without the sense that today is different from yesterday and tomorrow might be different from today. Getting that back is like getting your breathing back after something has been sitting on your chest for a year. He had 12 regular clients now. Nothing big. A retired teacher who needed help every week. A small tailor shop that kept having network problems. 3 students who paid him monthly to keep their devices running. A young mother who needed her home internet set up properly because her children were learning online. He was making enough, not to be comfortable, but enough to eat properly, enough to fix the broken fan, enough to buy a second-hand laptop of his own so he could work faster and look up solutions more efficiently. And every night before he slept he wrote in the notebook. The number at the top counted down. Day 20, day 21, day 22. He was building a streak, and the streak was building him. Day 34 was the day that shook him. He was at the tailor shop, fixing a router issue when a man walked in, well-dressed, older, running a small chain of 3 clothing stores in the neighborhood. He watched Daniel work for a few minutes, said nothing. Then as Daniel was packing up, the man asked one question. "Do you only do home visits? Or could you set up a proper system for a small business?" Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. The old voice came immediately, quiet and certain. "You are not qualified for that. You will mess it up. This man has real money and real expectations, and you are just a person who fixes phones in apartment hallways." He heard it clearly, every word, and then he answered the man. "Yes," Daniel said, "I can do that." He had no idea exactly how yet. But he knew the shape of it. He knew the principles. And he knew something deeper than both of those things. He knew he would figure it out, because he had been figuring things out for 34 days straight, and the person who figures things out for 34 days straight does not stop being that person on day 35. He spent 3 days researching, nights mostly after his regular clients. He studied how small business networks were structured. He watched tutorials until his eyes burned. He wrote everything down in the notebook, which was nearly full now, its pages dense with understanding that had not existed 40 days ago. Then he went back to the man. He sat down, he opened the notebook, and he laid out exactly what the 3 stores needed, why they needed it, how long it would take, and what it would cost. The man listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When can you start?" "Day 41. Daniel wrote it in the notebook that night, and he wrote something else underneath it, something he had not written anywhere in a very long time. I think I understand now what this 90 days is actually about. It is not about the work. It is not about the money. It is about finding out who you become when you stop waiting to feel ready and just start answering yes. The weeks that followed were the hardest and the best of Daniel's life in equal measure. Some days went wrong. A setup took 4 times longer than expected. A client was frustrated. He made a mistake with a configuration and spent an entire night fixing it, losing sleep and nearly losing the client, and the fear that hit him at 3 a.m. that night was familiar and cold and very convincing. But here is what was different now. When the fear came, he did not believe it completely anymore. He had proof. Not the proof of a perfect record. The proof of a man who keeps showing up. And those 2 kinds of proof are very different. One is fragile, the other is unbreakable. By day 60, Daniel had 22 clients. By day 70, he had hired a neighbor's son to help him with overflow work, paying him fairly and teaching him what he knew. He wrote in the notebook, "The moment I became someone who could teach, I became someone who could not be taken back to who I was before day 90. Daniel did not celebrate. He did not mark the day with anything that looked like a finish line, because by day 90, he understood something the note had known before he did. This was never a finish line. It was a beginning line, disguised as a deadline. He sat at his desk. He opened the notebook to the last page. At the top, he had written the number 90 days ago. He looked at it for a long time. Then he turned to a fresh notebook he had bought a week earlier. He wrote the date at the top of the first page. And underneath it, he wrote, Day 1, because the person who had sat on that floor with $17 and nothing to lose had not found success in those 90 days. He had found something more important than success. He had found out that he was the kind of man who, when given a question worth answering, would answer it every single day until the answer became his life. That is not something you find once and keep forever. That is something you choose every morning. My friend, Daniel's story is not about technology. It is not about starting a business. It is not even about 90 days. It is about what happens when a person who has been living as though the future is already decided dares to ask a different question. The piece of paper did not give Daniel anything he did not already have. It did not contain a secret formula or a step-by-step guide. It did not promise him success or tell him what to do. It asked him one thing: what will you do with the next 90 days? And that question, those 11 words on a torn piece of paper at midnight, was enough, because Daniel was ready for it, even though he did not know he was ready, even though he felt like the furthest thing from ready. The readiness was always there, buried under the weight of waiting for something to change from the outside. Here is what I need you to understand. Right now, wherever you are, whatever screen you are listening on, whatever time it is, whatever you have or do not have, you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not out of time. The only question that matters is the same one that cracked something open in a man with $17 on a cold midnight street. What will you do with the next 90 days? Because here is what Daniel learned, and what I want you to carry with you. The world does not change when your circumstances change. The world changes when you change. And you change not through one dramatic decision, not through one perfect plan, but through the quiet daily practice of answering yes when everything inside you is saying wait. So here is your challenge. Tonight before you sleep, open something to write on. It does not need to be a notebook. It does not need to be special. Write today's date, write the number 90 above it, and then write one honest answer to this question. If I had 90 days and nothing to lose, what would I actually try? Do not judge the answer. Do not edit it. Do not shrink it to fit what feels realistic. Just write the truest version of it you can, then tomorrow take one step toward it. Not a perfect step, not a big step, just the first honest one, because the person you are going to be in 90 days is not waiting for the right moment. They are waiting for you to start. If this story moved something inside you, if you heard something in it that you needed to hear today, give this video a like right now as your commitment. Not to me, to yourself. Share it with someone who is sitting in their own dark room, wondering if anything is ever going to change. Because sometimes all it takes is 11 words at the right moment. Drop a comment telling me what your 90-day question is. What would you actually try if you stopped waiting to feel ready? I will be back with another story. Until then, remember this: you are not out of time. The question is already in front of you. What will you do with the next 90 days?